Hurricane Irma gives Florida a coast-to-coast pummeling. Miami, Hurricane Irma gave Florida a coast-to-coast pummeling with winds up to 130 miles per hour Sunday, swamping homes and boats, knocking out power to millions and toppling massive construction cranes over the Miami skyline. The 400-mile-wide, 640-kilometer-wide storm blew ashore in the morning in the mostly cleared-out Florida Keys, then began a slow march up the state's west coast, its punishing winds extending clear across to Miami and West Palm Beach on the Atlantic side. Irma was expected to hit the heavily populated Tampa-St, Petersburg area early Monday, though in a much weakened state. While it arrived in Florida a Category 4 hurricane, by nightfall it was down to a Category 2 with winds of 105 miles per hour, 177 kilometers per hour. Pray for everybody in Florida, Governor Rick Scott said on Fox News Sunday as more than 160,000 people statewide waited it out in shelters. There were no immediate confirmed reports of any deaths in Florida, in addition to the 24 people killed during Irma's destructive trek across the Caribbean. Many streets were flooded in downtown Miami and other cities. In the low-lying Keys, where a storm surge of over 10 feet was recorded, appliances and furniture were seen floating away, and Monroe County spokeswoman Cammie Clark said the ocean waters were filled with navigation hazards, including sunken boats and loose vessels. But the full extent of Irma's wrath there was not clear. A Miami woman who went into labor was guided through delivery by phone when authorities couldn't reach her and high winds and street flooding. Firefighters later took her to the hospital. An apparent tornado spun off by Irma destroyed 6 mobile homes in Palm Bay, midway up the Atlantic coast. Flooding was reported along Interstate 4, which cuts across Florida's midsection. In downtown Miami, 2 of the 24 construction cranes looming over the skyline collapsed in the wind. No injuries were reported. City officials said it would have taken about 2 weeks to move the massive equipment. Curfews were imposed in Miami, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale and much of the rest of South Florida, and some arrests of violators were reported. Miami Beach barred outsiders from the island. Fort Lauderdale police arrested 9 people they said were caught on TV cameras looting sneakers and other items from a sporting goods store and a pawn shop during the hurricane. More than 2.7 million homes and businesses across the state lost power, and utility officials said it will take weeks to restore electricity to everyone. While Irma raked the state's Gulf Coast, forecasters warned that the entire state, including the Miami metropolitan area of 6 million people, was in danger because of the sheer size of the storm. Nearly 7 million people in the southeast were warned to evacuate, including 6.4 million in Florida alone. About 30,000 people heeded orders to leave the Keys as the storm closed in, but an untold number refused, in part because too many storm-hardened residents, staying behind in the face of danger is a point of pride. John Houston, who stayed in his Key Largo home, watched his yard flood even before the arrival of high tide. Small boats floating down the street next to furniture and refrigerators. Very noisy, he said by text message. Shingles are coming off. Irma made landfall just after 9 a.m. at Cujo Key, about 20 miles outside Key West. During the afternoon, it rounded Florida's southwestern corner and hugged the coast closely as it pushed toward Naples, Sanibel, Fort Myers and, beyond that, Sarasota, at 14 miles per hour, 23 kilometers per hour. Forecasters warned some spots could see a storm surge of up to 15 feet of water. Gretchen Blee, who moved with her husband to Naples from Long Island, New York, after Superstorm Sandy in 2012 heavily damaged their beach home, took cover in a hotel room as Irma raged. "I said let's go and live the good life in paradise," she said. And here we are, some 400 miles north of the Keys. People in the Tampa-St, Petersburg area started bracing for the onslaught. The Tampa Bay area, with a population of about 3 million, has not taken a direct hit from a major hurricane since 1921. "I've been here with other storms, other hurricanes. But this one scares me," Sally Carlson said as she snapped photos of the waves crashing against boats in St. Petersburg. "Let's just say a prayer. We hope we make it through." After leaving Florida, a weakened Irma is expected to push into Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee and beyond. A tropical storm warning was issued for the first time ever in Atlanta, some 200 miles from the sea. President Donald Trump approved a disaster declaration for Florida, opening the way for federal aid. Once this system passes through, it's going to be a race to save lives and sustain lives, Federal Emergency Management Agency Chief Brock Long said on Fox News Sunday. Florida's governor activated all 7,000 members of the Florida National Guard, and 10,000 guardsmen from elsewhere were being deployed. Irma at one time was the most powerful hurricane ever recorded in the open Atlantic, a Category 5 with a peak wind speed of 185 miles per hour, 300 kilometers per hour, and its approach set off alarm in Florida. For days, forecasters had warned that Irma was taking dead aim at the Miami area and the rest of the state's Atlantic coast. But then Irma made a more pronounced westward shift that put a bullseye on the Tampa area, the result of what meteorologists said was an atmospheric tug-of-war between weather systems that nudged Irma and determined when it made its crucial right turn into Florida. Hurricane Irma has begun its assault on Florida, with the storm's northern eye wall reaching the lower Florida Keys as a powerful Category 4 storm. Irma lashed the area with maximum sustained winds near 130 miles per hour, 215 kilometers per hour, and the U.S. National Hurricane Center said it was expected to remain a powerful storm as it moved through the Florida Keys and near the state's west coast. Irma, which killed at least 22 people in the Caribbean, was considered a life-threatening danger in Florida as well, and could inflict a natural disaster causing billions of dollars in damage to the third most populous U.S. state. The county administrator in the Florida Keys says crews will begin house-to-house searches Monday morning, looking for people who need help and assessing damage from Hurricane Irma. Monroe County Administrator Roman Gastasi says relief will arrive on a C-130 military plane Monday morning at the Key West International Airport. Once it's light out, they'll check on survivors. They suspect they may find fatalities. Mr. Gastasi said they are prepared for the worst. Hurricane Irma made landfall Sunday morning in Cujo Key. More than 3.3 million homes and businesses, and counting, have lost power in Florida as Hurricane Irma moves up the peninsula. The widespread outages stretch from the Florida Keys all the way into central Florida. Florida Power and Light, the state's largest electric utility, said there were nearly 1 million customers without power in Miami-Dade County alone. The power outages are expected to increase as the storm edges further north. There are roughly 7 million residential customers in the state. 2 manatees were stranded after Hurricane Irma sucked the water out of Sarasota Bay, in Florida's Manatee County. Several people posted photos of the mammals on Facebook Sunday, hoping rescue workers or wildlife officials would respond. Michael Seckler posted that the animals were far too massive to be lifted, so they gave them water. Marcelo Clavijo posted that a group of people eventually loaded the manatees onto tarps and dragged them to deeper water. More than 3 million people are said to be without power now, about an eighth of the state's population. As the hurricane moves up the western coast of Florida, Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg will likely be hit at around 11 p.m. ET, 4 a.m. GMT, and expect winds and surges for a number of hours. The names Harvey and Irma will be retired so that no other hurricanes can be named that way. It is the first time 2 consecutive hurricanes have had their names retired since Rita and Stan in 2005. The Lee County Sheriff's Office says water began leaking through the roof at the Germain Arena shelter in Estero just as the eye of Hurricane Irma drew near. Thousands of evacuees have crowded into the minor league hockey stadium, which seats about 8,400 people and is being used as a shelter. The sheriff's office posted on Facebook that authorities are monitoring the problem. The eye wall of the storm has hit Fort Myers, with winds of 110 miles per hour, and now they are about to get the backside of the storm. Hurricane Irma is moving ashore in southwest Florida after making landfall for the second time on Marco Island close to Naples. Irma weakened to a Category 2 storm at about 5 p.m. Sunday, local time, as it hugged the coastline moving north towards Tampa, the Daily Mail reports. The National Hurricane Center said Irma's winds were at 177 kilometers per hour, just below major hurricane status, as the center of the still dangerous and wide storm moved further inland late on Sunday afternoon, local time. It was smacking Naples after coming ashore at Marco Island at 3:35 p.m. local time. Areas of Naples are now suffering substantial flooding in swaths of the west coast, as well as lakes, bays and sounds nearby, are under 15 feet, 4.5 meters, storm surge warnings. The National Hurricane Center said water levels in Naples rose 7 feet, 2.1 meters, in just 90 minutes. Pray for everybody in Florida, Governor Rick Scott said on Fox News. As Irma continued its unprecedented assault on the state, 2 of the 4 victims claimed in Florida were identified. Hardee County Sheriff's Deputy Julie Bridges, a mother of 1, and Hardee Correctional Institute Sergeant Joseph Fossman crashed and died on Sunday around 60 miles, 95 kilometers, from Saratoga. While the confirmed death toll is currently just 4, the suffering from Irma's onslaught is much wider, with more than 3 million losing power in swaths of Miami, where 2 cranes were toppled, left flooded. The Florida Keys, which is where Irma first made landfall, are now the subject of a huge airborne relief mission. President Donald Trump declared a major disaster in the state of Florida on Sunday, making federal aid available to people affected by Hurricane Irma in 9 counties already hit by the storm. As the hurricane moves up the west coast, experts have warned that there will be a negative surge of 3 or more feet, 1 meter, as water is pulled out into the sea, or into the centers of lakes, bays or sounds. That might make it look like the hurricane is subsiding, but it's just a prelude to the real surge, which will push huge amounts of water back towards the land. A storm surge hit Naples at 4:35 p.m. as the eye of the storm got closer to the city, with feet of water suddenly flowing onto streets. But that was a small pre-surge and not the full level. That kind of flooding is a risk on both sides of the state, but is particularly dangerous on the west coast. Previous hurricanes have seen dozens killed after people ran out onto beaches to pick up newly stranded fish, only to be caught as the deadly waves flow back onto the helpless crowds. There are longer-term threats, too, from sewage and other toxins being caught in the surge back onto land. "We're going to be inundated with unprecedented amounts of water," Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn said. "It's going to stress our storm water and sewer capacity. There's going to be overflows. There's no 2 ways around it." That in turn could lead to runoff being sent into Tampa Bay, which means dangers to public health as well as to structures. Leakage from the radiation and toxins created by the state's phosphorus mining industry, the largest in the nation, as well as from the 51 Superfund sites. Those are largely old chemical or oil storage facilities that have poisoned groundwater over decades, and are among the most toxic places in the U.S., according to the Environmental Protection Agency. Florida's Department of Environmental Protection said it would be testing groundwater as soon as it's safe to do so after the storm. EPA said it will also be on the ground after the storm. As the nation's eyes turned to follow Irma up the west coast of Florida, the Keys began to take in the immensity of the damage done. Florida responded with the launch of a massive airborne relief mission by Monroe County Emergency Management, whose director, Martin Centerfit, called the damage done to the Keys a humanitarian crisis. He promised disaster mortuary teams, as well as C-130 cargo planes, which U.S. Air Force Special Operations pilots are testing flights around the massive storm, the Miami Herald reported. Also on the mission will be Air National Guard flights of more C-130s, backed up by squadrons of helicopters. They are expected to start arriving early on Monday morning. The first load will head to Florida Keys Marathon Airport. As it can handle about 2 C-130 planes at a time, the plan is to land 2 every 2 hours, keeping a steady flow of goods. "The help is on its way," Centerfit said, adding, "We're going to get more aid than we've ever seen in our lives." Victim Julie Bridges, 42, a 13-year veteran of the county force, had been collecting supplies to keep helping civilians when she collided with Joseph Osman, 53, who had been going to work. She worked the shelter all night and was going home to retrieve some more items and then go back to the shelter, Hardee County Sheriff Arnold Lanier told the Hardee County Herald-Advocate. The wreck was reported at 6:53 am, local time, having been found at the intersection of Old Cruiseville Road and SR 66 in Zolfo Springs. No other vehicles or people were involved. The Florida Highway Patrol is investigating the incident, and has not yet ruled whether the winds and rain caused by Irma at the time of the crash directly influenced the accident. Bridges was a mother of an 8-year-old boy and a member of the Sheriff's Honor Guard. Osman had been working at the Hardy Correctional Institute for 21 years. "We are heartbroken by this loss, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family and fellow officers at this time," Corrections Secretary Julie Jones told the Miami Herald. They were not the only people to die amid the deluge. Another man was killed after tropical storm-strength winds caused him to lose control of the truck he was driving through Monroe County, which contains Key West. He had been carrying a generator, local officials told ABC News. And an elderly man died of natural causes while sheltering in a school in the city of Marathon on the Keys, Larry Kahn, an editor for FL Keys News.com, said. He was staying in one of the classrooms, Kahn explained. "Police came up, along with a couple of nurses who are here, actually, got everyone out of the room and sealed it off." Those deaths come after Irma claimed at least 25 lives in the Caribbean as it swept over several countries, destroying entire islands.